Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The special public meeting, 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. First item on the agenda is the board discussion for the tentative agreement between Danville Local Teachers Association and the Danville Community School Board Corporation. Dr. Schaefer.
Good evening. Tonight we are meeting to satisfy a statutory requirement in Indiana Code, and that is that the board will conduct a public meeting to discuss the tentative agreement between our local teachers association and the school corporation. We have reached that tentative agreement, so this is our meeting to do that, to discuss it. And then we also have posted the tentative agreement for at least 72 hours, and following this meeting we'll again post that agreement for 72 plus hours, and then be asking the board to ratify this agreement in the teacher contract on October 5th at our regular meeting. That will be the ratification meeting, and at that meeting the public will have an opportunity to then speak and be heard in any regards that they would have to the agreement. So our duty tonight is to discuss the agreement, and there are just 5 tenets of the agreement, and I'll kind of briefly go through those and be happy to answer any questions that you might have or entertain any discussion. First, we've established the amount of dollars to be funded into our compensation model for this school year as established at $228,618, and that is in addition to any salary-related benefits such as teacher retirement fund, OASDI, those types of salary-related benefits. So $228,618 will be funded into salary of all of our eligible teachers. Secondly, the teacher beginning base, so those who are hiring in at 0 years experience, that will be established upward at $41,500 for the 2021 contract year. Our previous base was $40,000, so we're happy to be able to increase that base for our beginning teachers. Third, our middle school teachers, we had 7 teachers at the middle school who are teaching online class during the day in addition to their regular classes, instead of them doing the typical enrichment and remediation classes. We have agreed to pay them just an additional stipend of $1,200 and to give them 1 additional personal day for their use. Fourth, this agreement is already in our contract. We just made a slight adjustment to it, but teachers will earn $12 per class period for covering another staff member's classroom of students on that teacher's prep period. And a period is a minimum of 40 minutes, and we'll pay that benefit out at the end of each semester for however many periods that teacher has been asked to cover another teacher's classroom during the teacher's prep. Again, that's already in our agreement. The difference is that before you had to accumulate 7 of those periods before you could sort of turn them in for pay. So regardless of how many periods are covered, they'll just be added up and they'll be paid out at the end of each semester. And then lastly, we did amend this, and we contacted both DLTA and our team contacted our bargaining team members. We realized, as I was going through beginning to draft the language for the contract, we realized we left out a clause that we typically revisit each year, and that is in Article 19 of our existing contract, which is essentially, it pays an early retirement incentive for teachers who are planning to retire and notify us in writing prior to the beginning of February each year. And that pays a $2,000 stipend for that early notice. That allows us to post positions early that we know we're going to have openings and need to fill, allows us to get to the teacher market, which is a very thin market, allows us to get to that market early with our positions for the following year. And that is just a one-time payment, but also as it's in the contract, it's in there just a yearly commitment. So we needed to extend it, and we quite honestly forgot to do that. So I talked to Brandon Daub, who's the DLTA chair, and we agreed that it's something would be mutually beneficial for the school district and for teachers retiring. So we agreed to extend that through 4 p.m. on February 1st of 2021, teachers intending to retire early or intending to retire at the end of the year give us that early notification. And it will continue to pay the same $2,000 stipend that it has. And those are the 5 tenets of the tentative agreement. And again, much shorter, I think, in terms of the provisions than it was last year, and pretty straightforward.
Very good. We'll set up time now for discussion. I want to first of all just thank the board members who were involved with that negotiation process. So thank you, Mr. McRoberts and Mr. Mason, for your time in those extra meetings and your leadership in those roles. I'd also like to thank our administrative team, Dr. Schaefer and Mr. Parkinson, for your time throughout that period as well. So with that, let's open up the floor for discussion and questions. Dr. Beatty.
Yeah, with the $228,618, what does that look like per teacher with the points per? Have you figured out that dollar amount per point yet?
I believe, and Mr. Parkinson, please correct me because I know I'll be off a little bit. I was thinking it was around $245 per point. I know that adjusted up and down a little bit as we're narrowing it down. The average, and nobody will be exactly average, but the average teacher increase is going to be around $1,800. So if you earned 8 points, which is the maximum, you're going to be a little over, I think it's $1,960. And if you earned 7 points, which will be pretty typical, you're going to make about $1,715 of an increase. And that's going to cover 99% of our teachers in those amounts. Okay. And Mr. Parkinson, please, if I'm off.
Just no, within $5 or so on both of those. It was right there.
Very good, thank you. Gentlemen, I want to congratulate you too on getting this done pretty quickly. I know that I've sat in on 7 of them, and by far that sounds like it was the easiest. We tried, believe it or not, the first year Matt and I, Mr. Stewart and I sat on the board, we tried to give money away and they didn't take it. So for you guys to come up with like 1 or 2 meetings and you got it, good for you.
So that explains why they said, thank goodness Doc isn't here when we walked in? Is that...
I mean, yeah, that first year, it was crazy. They took $50,000 less than what they could have. So, I mean, in a year that's lean, and $228,000 is good. That's a good number. I mean, that's a really good number. Now, hopefully that goes forward and looks okay next year with the new biennium budget. But does this take into account some of that too? That maybe
That's a really good,
leaner.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we told our teachers, we're very transparent with our bargaining process. And again, kudos to both of our teams. Very amicable discussions all the way through. Appreciate the cooperation on everybody's part. And our goal was to give our teachers a good raise this year, but we also told them we're going to have to be a little bit conservative because as we look at this next biennial budget, we know it's going to be tight. We have proactively already reduced our expenditures and our commitments into next year. So we had a good idea of what we're working with and preparing for that the next 2 years. So we feel good about what we felt like we maximized what we could give and wanted to make sure that teachers certainly had some say in how they received that money. So it was a good conversation.
Very good.
Yeah, it was, very cordial atmosphere. So I appreciate that, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But one of the things, or the biggest thing I like about, all these points put money in our teachers' pockets, basically, in a time when teaching is very difficult. It always is, but with COVID and all those types of things, I think they feel appreciated by the school corporation as a result of this contract, and I'm very pleased about that. I do have one question, Dr. Schaefer, just on clarification. That, and I didn't think about this when you had originally sought our input on the $2,000 stipend. Does that go into their retirement account that is established with us? Is this just a straight $2,000 stipend that's given to them? Is it given at the time they turn in their retirement or when they retire?
It's a $2,000 cash stipend, and I believe we're paying that out probably in their last pay would be my
Okay.
guess. But Mr. Parkinson, you might know that better than I do.
No, I think that's accurate. It's also eligible for, they get turf on it in the same way they would with any other wages.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a few questions or points as well. I was glad to see that we were able to increase the teacher starting pay a little bit. I know that that has been a goal of this board for at least 8 years, and I'm sure before that. It has been very difficult to do that. In the past, we have run against just tight budgets, where that's been very difficult to accomplish. And we've even in the past run up against the board not wanting, the Teachers Association not wanting to do that, because when you raise those starting salaries, that's money going somewhere and not elsewhere, right? So I'm glad that we've had that a little bit of a jump there. I just encourage the two of you as you continue forward to keep pushing that number. Because that's one of the reasons we discussed and had a referendum, was an effort to raise that much more, right? So I'm happy for the increase. I'm glad that both parties were able to come to an agreement on that increase, but would love to in the future see that to grow, and even not being on the board in the future when those next decisions are made, I'm, as going to be a community member, highly supportive of those salaries continuing to increase. It obviously gives us a competition advantage and attracting talent to our organization in a time where, as Dr. Schaefer already communicated, the labor pool is pretty shallow with the lack of teachers entering this profession. And so in order to get the best teachers, we're going to have to pay for them. And I also appreciate, on the same idea of competition, the idea of continuing that $2,000 stipend for retirees, because that ability to, because it wasn't that long ago that teachers were waiting until the very last minute to let us know that they were retiring. And I understand there's a number of reasons why you might want to do that, but incentivizing them with a monetary incentive to let us know earlier so we can start recruiting their replacement, I think, is a fantastic opportunity. And as you can imagine, in February, March, April, the pool of unhired talent for that next school year is much, much greater than it is in June or July. So thank you to the team for those things. And those are all my questions and or comments. Anyone else?
One other, as far as the beginning teaching pay goes, where does that, I know you don't know what everybody else's contract is this year, but where does that put us with starting teachers in other districts within the county?
I honestly don't know the answer, because they're not settled either. So whether we make up ground or lose ground in that will be dependent upon how they end up settling this year. I only know of one other district in the county that's settled, and our increase this year is a little bit more than their increase is. But the other 4 districts, I just don't know the answer to that yet.
And one other quick comment. I also like the fact that, we're looking at 17 and change and 19 and change versus the $1,500 increase for new teachers, which gives us a little bit more separation in those, because we had a lot of compaction. And I like to see that you guys did a great job kind of getting those numbers, keeping those numbers apart so that we don't get more creep into the next level. So thank you.
Yeah, last year we were able to put a step in there with the catch-up clause that we did for teachers with a year of experience and up to about 16 years. This year wasn't going to be there, and that's a conversation we had near the end of our negotiations, that everybody was agreed that made sense to do that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Dr. Schaefer, Mr. Parkinson, any more comments or additions to the presentation?
Just a note that following this meeting, and I appreciate them waiting till this public meeting was held, the teachers, I do believe, plan to take a ratification vote of theirs for their membership yet this week. So we should know the results of that, and then we'll prepare to have our ratification vote by the board on Monday.
Okay, great. If you could just let us know when you get the results of that, that'd be fantastic. All right, hearing no other discussion, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mason, I was giving you a chance there.